I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Public Works Committee for the City of Rapid City on Tuesday, December 12th. Roll call and determination of quorum is the first order of business. It's easy for me to say. Brenda? Oh, excuse me, Stacy. Here. Thank you. First order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion? So moved. Moved by Roberts, second by Nordstrom. All in favor? Aye. The agenda is adopted. Now is the time for general public comment. A time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue, not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting or on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the alderman present. And I have no general public consent forms or comment forms, so public comment is now closed. Now we go on to consent items 1 through 18. And we have Jason Solomon. Well, item 18. Oh, Dale Tech.
To pull item number 14, please.
Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to approve the remainder of the items with the exception of 14 and 18? So moved. Second. Moved by Roberts, second by Nordstrom. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. And so we go on to item 14. Chair recognizes Dale Tech.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item actually is a little premature. It's for 2018, so the Public Works Department requests that this item be to continue 2 weeks, so it'll be on the next Public Works Committee and therefore approved in the year 2018.
Okay, so we'd like to continue. Okay. Richie Nordstrom moves to continue. Do I have a second? Second from Modrick. All in favor? Aye. Motion is the item is continued. On to number 18, and we go to Jason Solomon.
Madam Chair, can we read this in so I can
Please
make
do.
a motion?
Yeah,
okay. Authorize Parks Department to harvest 150 deer for the 2017-2018 season. I move to approve and retain the floor if I can get a second. I'll second.
Moved by Solomon and seconded by Nordstrom. And please continue, Jason.
All right, thank you. A few questions for our Parks and Recreation Director, Jeff Biegler, if you don't mind. Jeff, you and I have had some conversations about this because a lot of these deer happen to be in my neighborhood, in my ward, and this is a continuing issue. So first of all, can you tell us this count and the harvesting, does the harvesting include the neighborhood of Red Rocks, Countryside, and that area out there on Sheridan Lake Road?
It hasn't in past years. However, this year, because we have been getting calls and interest in expanding the harvesting area to that area, we will be looking for suitable locations to harvest in the Red Rocks area.
Okay, so excellent. That's good to hear that the harvesting will include that area. Now, can you talk a little bit about what we do once we harvest these deer?
Sure. The deer are harvested and then they are taken out to a processing plant where they are processed, and the meat is then donated to Feeding South Dakota, where it goes to those folks that could certainly use the meat.
Okay, excellent. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple questions, Jeff. And how is the processing paid for?
Well, the processing, most of it is paid for by our Parks and Recreation operating account. However, we do have two organizations that do assist with the processing costs, the feeding Sportsmen Against Hunger, and the other group, which name escapes me right at the moment, and I'm sorry about that, but they do each contribute to the processing cost.
Are the numbers of deer being harvested up this year because of the inclusion of Red Rocks in that area?
No, I don't think so. They are up this year for whatever reason, whether it's the drought has brought them closer into town, whether it's just a natural uptick in the populations, I'm not really sure. But we did see an increase of about 38% in our count over last year. As you may or may not know, the last 2 years we've harvested 100 deer each of the last 2 years. So our number this year will reflect the increase in the number that we've seen during our monitoring session.
Okay, well, that's enough information for me. Thank you for your comments. And the motion on the floor is to approve. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Then the motion carries. Okay, now we're on to non-consent items, items 19 through 20, and public comment is now open. Cale, would you just prefer to wait until your item came up? We could, I appreciate that. That'd be no problem. And I think I'm going to do the same with Tony. Okay, yeah, all right. All right, so now we're on to item 19, discussion on the resolution to meter all connection points to the Rapid City water system. And Alderman Jason Solomon brought this to us as a concern from a retreat that the council held just recently. So we'll go to Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the reason I put this on the agenda was to make sure that we understood, because it wasn't clear to me, that we meter all the city water that is used from parks and fire, this building, you name it. And so that was one of my questions that I had for Dale Tech. And if you don't mind if I can direct that question. So Dale,
Yes.
can you give the council clarification of, do we meter all of the city usage of the water? Not necessarily charge back, but do we meter and measure it so we know what the usage is? So I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. We meter every connection to our water system. Currently, we have about 40 meters that are city accounts that are actually billed accounts. So enterprise funds, Civic Center, for example, those meters are charged to that appropriate account. Then we also have approximately 190 other meters that are connected to our system but are unbilled. So landscaping along Omaha Street, a lot of the parks properties, a lot of the public areas that there's irrigation provided are unbilled accounts, yet the water usage is indeed metered.
Okay, and that's important for us to know, because here's the deal. City Council has never received any sort of report or anything about that. And do you think that's something that we can provide at least maybe on an annual basis of what this usage is, so that we're aware? Because talking to my fellow council members, I mean, none of us were really aware. And it's good to hear it's happening, but for the accountability, transparency of it all, I think it would be a good thing to provide.
Yes, most certainly. We can annually provide to the City Council a report of water usage on all city accounts.
Okay. I'll yield. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dale, that information that we're collecting off of those meters, can you tell us a little bit about how that information is used? Meaning that it's a data collection, correct, at this time?
Yes, correct. The meters that are deployed out there are read monthly, just as any other meter in the city is. So we've got usage records for all of the meters in our system, whether they be billed or unbilled accounts.
Yeah, thank you, Dale, or Mr. Tech, I should say. What I'm concerned about is that this will lead to starting billing to these unbilled accounts, and that's my concern, is that we start going in that direction, because we do have that data. So at this time, I'm just very supportive of just collecting the data only, and not going on a path where we start charging ourselves. And then it gets very complicated into the charging back and payback and all of that. So I just want to make sure that we stay on the path, or on the original concept of just data collection only. Thank you. I'll yield.
So do I have a motion to acknowledge the discussion? Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, Jason Solomon.
First of all, I'll make a motion to acknowledge the discussion. And a follow-up
Okay.
on that. Dale, do we measure all connection points to the city water system? Not just the city's portion, but just all connection points. Is there
Yeah,
anything
yes.
unaccounted for?
No, every connection to our system is metered. Are there illegal connections out there? We hope not, but if we do find one, we certainly take care of it. But to our knowledge, all taps to our system are indeed metered.
Okay. So like someone steals cable, they might be able to steal water if they dug a trench and connected to pipe. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. Okay. Well, this is important because as we talk a lot about water in our community, we want to make sure that everything's measured. You know, that you've mentioned before about potential, you know, how much percentage of water is unaccounted for, perhaps due to a leak somewhere, and those kinds of things. So what I wanted to make sure was that we are doing everything we can to at least measure our usage, and we're not, no crisis or anything like in a drought situation, but you never know if it is. And then we have the data to say, hey, scale back on watering the parks, you know, or whatever in those dire situations. That hopefully will never happen. But so I appreciate you being forthcoming, providing the data for us, and answering our questions today. And with that, I will yield.
All right, the motion is to acknowledge to the discussion. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, we're going to go on to item number 20. Appeal of denied exception request from KTM Design Solutions on behalf of Deanham to waive the requirement to construct sewer main along Murfield Drive. The only exception denied by staff out of 4 total exceptions submitted for the project. This is continued from November 28th from the Public Works Committee meeting. Dale Tech.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just an update. City staff has met with KTM Design Solutions in the past 2 weeks and are working towards an agreement with the applicant's concurrence. We request this item be continued another 2 weeks to give time for the working on the agreement.
Moved and seconded to continue this item. All in favor? Aye. We will continue the item for 2 weeks. On to number 21. Excuse me. Appeal of denied exception request from Spurlick Consulting on behalf of Freeland Meadows LLC to not construct Country Road with a minimum 36-inch wide pavement, or is that 36 feet? Yeah, there we go. Wide paved surface, curb, gutter, street, light, conduit, sewer, sidewalk at intersections, and grading for the sidewalk along developmental parcels. And Cale, I see you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cale McNaboe. I own Spurlick Consulting. I'm the civil engineer of record on this project. And thanks for the opportunity to come forward and bring forward some of the information I have regarding this exception request. I thought perhaps I could start with a brief snapshot of the subdivision, if I can get the zoom right. You know, perhaps I'll move on to a smaller exhibit. All right, so this is Prairie Meadows South subdivision, and I'd like to offer a couple of reference points. This is Haynes Avenue, as we see it. This is Country Road in this location. And right here is the future alignment of Lacrosse Street. Obviously, at some point, Lacrosse is going to head south and connect in with Lacrosse further to the south. Right now, my clients dedicated the easement that the Country Road lift station sits in. If you're familiar or driven down Country Road, you'll see the lift station sitting on the south side of the road. Through a TIF that was put together, sewer was brought through this location and runs into the Country Road lift station. It's ultimately pumped back out through Brookfield and winds up back in here, and sewer's out. I know that's probably a lot of information you'd really necessarily care about, but that's just for frame of reference. So the Country Road lift station sits on their property, and we've tried to do a land plan to accommodate 101 single-family residential lots on this parcel that my client owns. This parcel here. So there would be 101 residential lots in this area. And then hopefully we'd be looking at apartment lots fronting future Lacrosse Street. Obviously, Lacrosse Street's an arterial street. You traditionally try not to put a lot of single-family residential up against an arterial street because of the speed that you see on arterial streets. They're traditionally designed for 50 miles an hour. So the intention would be to hopefully come forward and get approval to do this subdivision, again with this residential street network and lot configuration. Just to avoid any confusion, these roads are not constructed right now. This is obviously the land, the master plan. This is a vacant field as of right now. To accomplish this, we put together the first phase of the subdivision plan and applied for an exception request. And that exception request is to not construct this piece of Country Road. Country Road in its existing condition is 20-foot wide. It's a rural section. It's got ditches on it. The requirement for this piece of arterial street would be a 36 foot of asphalt pavement, curb and gutter, sidewalks, streetlight conduits, water and sewer. Now, there's already a water main that happens on the other side of Country Road, so that part of the exception was granted at the staff administratively. The exception to the sewer was not granted, as well as the exception, of course, to the pavement, the curb and gutter, and those items. See if I can get zoomed out far enough to kind of illustrate this point. So when you think about it, again, this is the parcel that we're talking about. It's got 1,400 lineal feet of frontage to Country Road. This is Haynes Avenue in this location, existing Haynes Avenue, and it's improved. But this 3,900 lineal feet right here is not improved. That works out to 3/4 of a mile. So you got to drive on a 20-foot rural section to get to this point. To get to the Seeger Drive intersection, which is down here and also improved. The city just finished bringing the municipal infrastructure to that location. That's approximately 1.5 miles. So what you'd end up happening is you would be driving down a 20-foot wide rural section of road to this point. You would then, the road would expand out and you'd come into a 36-foot asphalt curb and gutter section of road until you got to this point, and then you're warping right back into the 20-foot rural section with ditches. To give you a snapshot of what that would look like, this is the Country Road lift station right there. So this is future Lacrosse Street. And this is the piece of Country Road that we're talking about building to basically 36-foot surface. Now the confusing part of that is that at this intersection of future Lacrosse, you'd need to be able to build turn lanes so you could turn onto Lacrosse. So you'd end up with essentially a 5-lane section at this point. You'd have one lane that goes through. You'd have a left moment, and you'd have a straight through here. Then you'd also have a turn lane on this side. So you've got two lanes that go straight through and 2 turns. So excuse me, there's 4 lanes at that location. Ultimately it would end up being signalized. I can't imagine that'd be required at this moment because there's nothing over here except fields. These are all fields, and the right-of-way is not dedicated to it. This then would be if you were driving from Haynes Avenue down Country Road coming into the subdivision. This would be the interior road network that we're talking about and the houses that would ultimately get built. To get an adequate right-of-way to construct Country Road, our clients are going to dedicate 17 feet of right-of-way as part of this plating. So we'll dedicate the 17 feet on our side of the road. There's a 66-foot right-of-way right now, so that gets us closer to arterial standards. But what we're lacking is the 17 feet on the other side. These roads, these lots have not been platted, and they're not all annexed right now. So what we lack at this point is the 17 feet on this side to get to a full 100-foot wide arterial street right-of-way. And I'll show you in a couple of cross sections why that's important. And I apologize for the scale somewhat, but I'll try to annotate this as best I can. What you see on this drawing is a cross-sectional view of what exists right now on Country Road and what's projected to happen on Country Road. The alignment for Country Road has been established when the city built the water main. So they set the future alignment for Country Road to accommodate a 50-mile-an-hour road. So I did not set these alignments. They've been set by the city's consultant when they designed the water line. But they've been nice enough to provide me that data. So I brought it in to these cross sections, and if you look at this, these lines right here, that's the existing grade on Country Road right now. And these dark lines are the finished grade. That's what we'd have to build it to. Now I've got a whole bunch of these. I've got a whole bunch of these cross sections. They're cut approximately every 200 feet along the way. In this instance, what we're looking at is, I told you that not all the right-of-way has been dedicated to Country Road. That's the edge of the right-of-way that's dedicated on the north side right now. This is the 17 feet that ultimately that party will end up dedicating to Country Road. To achieve this alignment and put the road in the middle of the right-of-way, it'd take 9 feet of fill at the edge of their property line. You'd still be sitting on, that is 8 feet of fill. So we need to acquire some sort of easements to be able to basically pile 8 foot of fill in the ditch and extend it out onto their property to be able to construct Country Road to the recommended standard. So what we see throughout the cross sections is that this depth varies. You know, it's not always in fill. Sometimes it's in cut. So another example would be this guy right here. So if this is the existing grade, excuse me, this works out to around, again, 8 feet of cut to get down to road grade. Which means that at the property line over here, you'd have to slope back up on their property to make the edge connect. So we'd be 3.5 feet in the ground on this guy's property, and we don't own that. So we'd have to go chase down or get easements to be able to do significant grading operations on their property to accommodate taking this thing from a rural section right now into a fully developed arterial street. Now, what happens on our property, though, you can see that we have the existing grade and the future alignment. We are going to grade our lots, because we're dedicating this right away. We're going to grade our lots to accommodate this future grade at Country Road. So what you'll see is we'll come in as part of our grading plan, and there's where the ditches are right now on Country Road. We will grade these lots, like I say, to accommodate houses in their, the back, excuse my drawing, it's really bad, to accommodate backyards that meet the future alignment of Country Road. So that being said, I'd like to point out some of the costs associated with doing this project. And traditionally, and I track this because I end up doing a lot of subdivisions in Rapid City. So every time I do a subdivision, I have a spreadsheet that runs out. I figure out how much curb and gutter is, which gives you a legitimate snapshot of how long the streets generally are. So if I know we installed 2,000 feet of curb and gutter, I know the road's 1,000 feet long because there's curb and gutter on each side, and I can back out the contract cost. Roads in Rapid City run about $675 a lineal foot, and that's just, that number's been there for quite some time, and it's just kind of the number that I generally tell all of our clients. You can anticipate $675 a foot. If you want to do the math on that, your average moderately workforce housing income lot would be on the order of 75 feet wide. 75 is a good number. Well, if it's 75 foot of frontage and that road is $675 a foot, but you're only paying for half because you have a lot on the other side, obviously, that works out to around $25,000 a lot. That's what the road costs to build a 75 foot of frontage. It's plus or minus. If you have to add more storm sewer, maybe it's a little more, but generally, those per lot costs run from 23 to 25, right in that range. So if you think 23 to 25,000 bucks a lot to build a road, and then you start thinking about country road. Now, country road's 1,400 lineal feet of road that we'd have to build. At $675 a foot, that works out to just shy of $1 million. But that's just to build the road. That's not going to include the traffic studies, the turn lanes, the turn signals, things of that nature, and the mass grading that would be needed to accommodate that. So it's very likely that building country road is going to be somewhere in that $1 million to $1.2 million by the time you get done coming up with that. Now you spread that out over the 105 lots that we're talking about platting, that's somewhere between 10 and 12 grand a lot. So you've already got 25,000 into building the road in front of your house, and then you have to put another 10 to 12,000 on top of that to accommodate the country road that we built, and that's how you end up with lot prices that are in that $35,000 to $37,000 a lot range. And it's not driven off the road that's in front; it's driven off essentially the offsite cost. With that. I would like to point out that our clients are coming forward with the intention of building what they see as workforce housing. Now, it's not low-income housing. It would be a workforce housing. Something in that $180,000 to $225,000 range is what they're ultimately shooting for. And to do that, we need to keep the cost down, because when you add another 10 grand to the lot, it just adds that 10 grand to the bottom line as well. It just keeps, every little add-on just keeps inflating this price. So I guess ultimately I'm coming forward asking for your support in granting the exception, not to install the curb and gutter, the asphalt, the grading work in Country Road, predicated upon a lot of the challenges that we have with lack of right-of-way, the depths of the cuts and fills, and essentially the ultimate cost to the subdivision.
Thank you, Cale. I think we'll go now to some questions from the committee up here. So we'll go first to Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair. Cale, just a moment. I'm going to ask you a question, but just kind of a comment just to let you kind of know where I'm coming from. There is an absolute need for workforce housing in Rapid City. In fact, most folks, aren't going to afford the high-end housing, and not everybody is in a real low-income housing. A lot of our families are just two working families, doing the best they can with a couple of kids, and so to have houses in this price range of 180 to, you said 225,000, this workforce housing's important. And in fact, looking kind of just in my short time on council, we haven't had a lot of effort in city limits to address this price range. We've had on other ends of the spectrum, but this price range where the bulk of our citizens are, there hasn't been a lot in Rapid City. So that's a concern to me. And the other thing that came up last Friday, I got to attend an event where the new commander of Ellsworth Air Force Base shared a lot of words. And one of the questions I asked him was, what are you looking for from the city? How can we help support the mission of Ellsworth, because it's vital to our economy and obviously our nation's security and all of those kinds of things. And he brought up a few things, but the first thing he said was housing. And I'm thinking about housing for the airmen and for the families out there, and where this particular development will take place would obviously, be a target for Ellsworth, as well as other working families that make up Rapid City. And so I'm looking for a way to encourage that kind of development. So to you and your clients, just know that's an objective that I have. I don't know where everybody else has. However, I did drive out to Country Road this weekend, seeing this on the agenda. I thought I'd take a drive out there. It is an awfully narrow road for to have 101 lots, with maybe a couple of vehicles, per lot. Not to mention the other development that's kind of out there. And so before I really address you, I just want to ask Dale a question and then have you respond. So Dale. So there's a need. There's this need for workforce housing, and every time we have requirements, it increases the price, and $10,000 is a big deal per lot. But that road is awfully narrow, and I can understand the city requirements because it is aptly named. It is a country road, just basic, plain asphalt road. But I kind of wonder, you have to drive a good deal of distance from Haynes down Country Road before you get to this development. So that portion won't be developed, but suddenly when you arrive at this development and this half of that road would be developed just in that section. Is this pretty typical where you have something developed way out and then you, over time, try to catch up with the rest of the road? Can you explain, just educate me a little bit on this if you don't mind?
No, I believe the reason that road hasn't been improved is because of very similar discussions in the past with the development adjacent to the road where the developer had asked not to build it because of the very points that Mr. McNabo has laid out for you today.
Okay. So here's the other issue, and we've kind of dealt with this from time to time as we see new development on some of this open land on the outer edge of our city. We have one, development on one side, but the other side has not even platted or no development at all. Are we working towards some sort of solutions and anything we can think of in order to share those costs among all the developers rather than placing it all on one?
Yeah, there's been discussions about what's the fair and equitable thing to do, but as far as us having any policies to bring forward to the council, we're far, far from that.
Okay. Mayor did have a good suggestion of maybe putting a task force together to maybe look at that issue. I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to now go to Cale. So Cale, I'm looking for a way to help, but at the same time, there are city standards for a reason, and I can understand the predicament that you and your client are in. Like, what kind of solutions do you see for us in terms of how you address this? Because you got to admit that road's, there's a big difference between 20 feet and 36 feet.
Yeah, there certainly is a big difference. And I think from my take on it is what we're talking about is that 1,400 feet in the middle. Now, if you were to come out either entrance, so let's say that we add all this housing to this subdivision and you come out the west entrance to it. You're going to drive on 100 feet of improved road before you're right back onto the existing section. So, unless we go through and do it all the way up to the subdivision, you're not going to see a dramatic improvement because we're only improving the snapshot that happens right in the middle of this section. Now, as far as accommodating how we handle platting, it's kind of if you can outweight your neighbor, which is kind of
right.
It's always kind of the goal.
If you're first, you're...
Yeah, if you're first, you're going to eat the whole thing. If you can outweigh them, then you can get the whole thing for free. And I think we see a lot of that. It
becomes a game.
Yeah, it's definitely.
And a game when we're talking, we have housing needs in our community, and to play game, and I don't blame them. I'd probably try to outweigh it too if I had that. So I'm looking for solutions though, because the eventuality of Country Road being developed is needed. And if you're adding development there, you're adding need there. And so I'm curious, have you any idea of what maybe can be done? Is there money that can be set aside, or are you open to assessments? What kinds of, have you had any of these kinds of discussions? Or are you just saying, hey, just eliminate it and don't do anything? And you don't have to negotiate up here. I'm just wondering if you've had these kind of discussions. I know you're looking back.
I guess I've not had the discussion with the ownership group.
All
I
right.
apologize.
And that's
but-
probably something we also, obviously, we have to do, but I think we have to work with the development community to figure this out. It's becoming an ongoing issue. It's almost every Public Works meeting we're dealing with this. So I'm not sure where I'm at right now. I want to figure out a way to keep it in this price range, but there is a need for that road to be developed at some point. However, you make a good point about having a lot of undeveloped, or not, I guess, just leaving the road as is until it gets to your small chunk of country road. There's a good case for that, and I understand that.
Yeah, and I believe that, further to the south, didn't Seeger Drive get developed under a federal, with federal money, one-time federal
Is that a
dollars?
question for Dale? Dale Tech, please.
No, Seeger Drive was reconstructed utilizing a city bond, so there were no federal dollars, there were all local dollars on that project.
Okay. And those are obviously priorities for the city, so we'd have to say Country Road was a real big priority for the rest of the taxpayers to carry that burden as well. It's a tough one. I'm not sure where I'm at. I'm going to listen to the rest of my council members and obviously our staff as well, and try to hopefully come up with a good solution. I'll yield.
I'm glad, because we have to get moving here. Chair recognizes John Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and he was about half as long as I'm going to take. No, I'm just kidding. So, Cale, I do support this, okay? And this is kind of an interesting discussion we're having here, and I enjoy it after, being on the council for almost 7 years, because we used to just use the warp, and then we'd just push it down the road, and we wouldn't even think about it until, eventually someday we had some CIP money or we had something, and we would fix the road. Does there need to be a way to fix this? Absolutely. Should the developer have to pay for 100%? Absolutely not. It's not fair because, like you said, if they wait them out, then all of a sudden the guy across the street can develop because you've increased the value of his property, which is totally wrong, no matter how you look at it. So, is there a way to do this? I do appreciate what they're doing, and they're giving us, the easement right now. So in the future, we will have that. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, either Dale or Cale, but I believe that the west side of this, where your developers did the subdivision on the other side, they got a warp at that time for the road. So, now we no longer use the warp. What happened to all these warps? They just kind of went away. And it doesn't matter anyway. I don't think we ever called a warp in. So, but what do we do now? Unless you want to stop growth, unless you don't want to have and I believe that your clients are looking at somewhere in the mid $30,000 range for a lot, somewhere in there, 40, somewhere 35 to 40, which without this road coming in, they're going to be, 50 or 45, 50, which, I've got quite a few lots out there on the market right now for over $40,000, and they're not moving very fast. But you get them under 40, and all of a sudden everybody wants to build. And that's what we need. We need to put rooftops up in Rapid City. We need to start moving some of these from Box Elder and from Somerset into Rapid City, because those rooftops are what pay property tax. They bring employees into Rapid City. They bring in sales tax to Rapid City. So we need to start doing that. If you look at the numbers, from 2000 until 2017, we had a big peak in building permits for single family back in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, and then the recession kind of hit us, and then after that we've lost a lot of what we should have as far as single family, because it's went outside of the area, whether it's Box Elder, whether it's Hermosa, whether it's Somerset, but it's went outside of the area. So I think it's very important us as a council find ways to incentivize and help the developers to develop these lots, or we can just watch them go out of town. So, it's a difficult thing to do, and most people sitting on this dais don't realize what the infrastructure costs are when you're putting in single family or you're putting in multifamily lots, it's outrageous. Everybody thinks that these developers are making a fortune, and they're not. You compare this to what was going on 20 years ago on costs. those numbers and that percentages went way down, and it has to compete with the outlying areas. So anyway, I appreciate you guys for what you're doing. You have my support on this. We need to figure this out. Do we need to figure it out right now and lose 100 lots? Probably not, in my opinion. So thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to accept the appeal and take that exception with retaining the floor. If I could get a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Motion by Modrick, second by Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could continue, much of this discussion is the discussion that we are having, and I think John hit the point when he's looking at where we should have been before 2008 and where we're not. We're not even catching up, and we've got a long way to go, and these are the opportunities that are going to put people in homes that we don't have enough of right now. And if we don't continue to work from within our country boundaries and allow these affordable housing workforce or otherwise, we're never going to gain. And we've got investors out there that are willing to put their funds on the line and the risk on the line in order to create the 101 houses that we could use tomorrow. And this road, as you go out and look at Country Road, and because of variances previous, that shouldn't be the reason to create a country road with the widths required to date when it's not time. That road isn't going to be used by the masses, and so then you're forcing infrastructure and forcing those to pay for it when it's still a country road. And all of your housing development and build out is between Haynes and where this project is at. So that's going to stay narrow. If we say build a roadway to nowhere on two ends, that doesn't accomplish our safety on that road. It doesn't expand that road unless we call it in. So is this the time? I don't believe it is. And I think the fair statement of, do we force the number one to do it and allow the others to then follow because it's the waiting game? I think the waiting game is why we're where we're at today. We continue to wait. And by doing so, by forcing one to create that infrastructure, is creating the delay when they say, you know what, the council has put this pressure on us and we can't build. And so we've got properties right now that would like to do shovel-ready projects, and we're holding them back. So I believe with confidence that this is the right thing to do, is to accept this appeal. If you look at the territory, if you go on the road, if you look on your Google map and you see where it's at, this is a place where we need to allow those houses to get in there. Let's get them built. Let's get people in, just like what's happening on Bengal and the other directions there. And La Crosse someday will happen, and I think even Mr. Tech had said, there's a someday coming, but it certainly isn't today. So this is the time to get those rooftops in there. Let's get those driveways in, and let's get people moved in and continue to build off of our workforce that needs the housing. And this isn't going to be the only one. We have many of them coming before us, and we need to really stay open-minded, and we need to partnership with these developers. And this is the only way we can partner, is to not force in the middle of a country road heavy infrastructure. We need to be fair on that, and that's how we're going to get it done. So I hope that we can get the support on this one. I think this project needs to go through. I hope we can shovel ready it up and get it done. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also going to be supporting the upholding this appeal. But I have several questions and concerns that comes to my mind right away is that who's going to pay for this road improvements in the future? Because we know that Country Road is going to have to be improved at some point. Several reasons why I'm saying that is that if you ever watched a young Air Force person drive down the road, they are doing the minimum speed is probably their minimum speed, or the speed limit is their minimum speed that they go through. And so we see a lot of excessive speed on those roads right now. And especially when, this time of year when we're starting to see icy roads, snow built up roads, we're going to start seeing people winding up in ditches. That creates other problems, other expenses for those homeowners. I just came from a class this morning, or an orientation this morning, about looking through different lenses and bringing in some different stakeholders. And I think if the mayor is actually really intent upon coming forward with a task force on this, we need to have some other stakeholders involved in this. Because being the chair of the CIP, most of this burden, I see it as coming back to the capital improvements planning for road improvements. And I also see this happening with not only Haynes Avenue, but also going north on Haynes Avenue, but Country Road will be involved in that. Also, we're doing Eglin Street, Seeger Drive, name a bunch of streets up in that area that are having a big impact upon our current CIP funding. And we've taken Vision Fund money to put into CIP to fix roads. And that's my concern, is that we're on a slippery slope of allowing roads like this to take place without any real thought of planning for the future. Who's going to pay for that road? Right now I'm watching state legislature putting together different drafts, resolutions, or draft bills together, what we can do for affordable housing. That's another lens that we can take an opportunity to bring to the table. TIF is another one, another component that the state is looking at. If we can bring that component to the table for another lens to look at for this task force discussion, I'd be in support of that as well. But my major concern is who's going to pay for this road. Right now, we only have the warps that are available, and we haven't used one yet that I'm aware of since I've been on the council. The other part of it is when we go through an assessment process, the assessment is just for the property next to the road. So those people have to incur that cost for the future. So my basic question is still remains, who's going to pay for this road once we go through these steps? And again, I support what your concept is, Mr. McElville. I appreciate that, bringing it forward to our attention on that. But again, I keep asking the question, who eventually is going to pay for that road improvements once we get these projects underway? Because I see we've got several road projects in the system right now that need this same issue addressed to them. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield.
Thank you. Chair recognizes John Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had one more thing to bring up, but then Richie said something, so I have to bring up one more. You know, I feel differently than probably all the rest of the council, because I'd like to see us use about 90% of the Vision Fund money for roads, but that's just my opinion because we're so far behind on everything. But I had dinner about a week ago with one of the VPs from Black Hills Corp. And one of the issues they're having right now with employees that they're trying to bring in is there's not enough affordable housing. We don't have enough housing up to the 250, 260 mark. So, you know, and you know, that's something, workforce housing. We need to kind of define that, because, you know, a year ago workforce housing was up to 200. Now it's 250. Next week it'll be 300. So, you know, I mean, I think we need to define low income. We need to define, you know, workforce. We need to define all of that stuff, because we kind of got a moving target right now. But I can tell you this, on a $35,000 lot, you can build workforce housing. You can stay under that magic $200,000 mark. And that is extremely hard to do now, extremely hard to do. You know, you look at the average lot, even in North Rapid, you get up in Rainbow Ridge area, you're looking at $46,000 to $48,000 a lot in North Rapid. You know, so you get south, southeast, you know, 45, 50 plus. You know, until we get those lots 35,000, at least under 40,000, we really can't keep those numbers under 200 or around $200,000. And I think that that's kind of one of the marks that we're all shooting at, you know, and I do appreciate, you know, some of the conversations that have been had about more density, about making lots smaller, about, you know, what we can do in the city of Rapid City to make it more affordable to build houses in Rapid. And I think we're finally starting in the right direction. I think we've got decent conversation going on now, instead of, you know, just let's pass this on, let's worry about it in a year, let's worry about it in a couple of years. So anyway, I appreciate this conversation. I think that, you know, allowing them to not build out Country Road at this time is the right thing to do, just to keep these lots affordable. So thank you.
I'm going to jump in here for a minute. So when we're looking at this, Mr. McNabb, if we go with this appeal of the denied exception, we're going to save you about $1 million. Is that right?
I would estimate Country Road cost about $1 million.
Okay.
Million two.
That's quite a sum. So what do we get for that as a city? I mean, what? I know it's 105 houses, but I want more than that. I want more than that.
Yeah.
I do, and then we're at a point where we can talk about this.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, if you want to talk to me about sustainability and environmental impact, this is your chance. You know, to not build a road, to have natural drainage, those kinds of things. Tell me how good this is for our city. And I think you'll get farther with the council. Tell me you're going to put in a green space in that area so the kids can play. Tell me that you may put a park or something, or a sidewalk in there for bicycles or whatever you want to do. This is your time to tell me what you're going to give the city, because we're going to let you not pay $1 million for this piece of road. And I know we're going to get 105 houses. I mean, that's terrific. I want that. But at this point, I think you can say, and because you're going to let us do this, we're going to do this.
Yeah. So the development of this parcel, you know, the biggest thing that pops out in my mind is there is a regional detention cell on the parcel.
Okay.
It's not a high capacity cell, but it's shown in the master plan that the city's created to construct a regional detention cell. And, you know, as part of this project, we're going to design that cell, and it does include a big open space that the drainage is going to traverse the subdivision through. I'd be more than happy to bring it back up and show it to you, but
You don't have to, but you can tell me about that, you know, at this point, so that we have like a little bit more of a give and take here, you know?
yeah. So you're going to be looking at, you know, 3 to 4 acres of just land that's strictly dedicated to drainage. And like I said, we're going to be building the city's one of the regional detention cells. It's going to be built upstream of the future La Crosse Street intersection, so we're going to end up having to build the storm sewer that's associated with it. And that's what you see from this. Now, as part of this subdivision, to make it work out, I've taken into account the future alignment of La Crosse Street too. So literally, I've already projected La Crosse Street south, so that when we come forward and La Crosse ultimately is going to march right up this eastern property line, we've set in place a plan, and my clients have paid me to do it, to have future La Crosse Street hit future Country Road, and to coordinate and grading wise, you know, create viable lots and apartment lots that are going to front that. You know, when La Crosse happens and Country Road ultimately happen, we're going to have a nice intersecting corridor here that's been well thought out and well planned for the city, and the regional detention's been accommodated.
I understand that, and so I think that while we're looking at this, and we're going to put a bunch of families there, hopefully, and an apartment building, that maybe you include a courtyard or something, so the kids aren't playing in those future busy roads. Okay, so kind of think about that when you're trying to talk to me about families. I like to see that they're safe where they are too. And that's it from me. Richie, did you want to make some comments?
Very good presentation. Madam Chair, thank you for that. Just a reminder that HUD already has a definition for what affordable housing is, workforce housing, and premium housing. So there is a definition that's available right now. If we want to do something locally, take that regulation to start with, and if the mayor is actually going to be putting together a task force, that'd be another one of those factors to take into consideration, is that we do have that definition to start with already. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield.
Thank you. So I guess the motion before us is to approve the appeal. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? And the motion passes. Now we're on to item number 21. Oh, excuse me, 22, yes, sorry about that, guys. Brielle subdivision, a request of Spurlick Consulting, Inc. for Tony Marshall to consider an application for vacation of right-of-way for property generally described as being located northeast of the intersection of Fairmont Boulevard and Tower Road. Seeing no lights. Oh, we're going to do presentation? Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Yes, you are here as a, I've got your sheet, so go ahead, Cal.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to keep this very short. Yes, it's just kind of give you a little bit of a background as to where this is located at. What we see is existing Tower Road. This is the bridge coming into town. Tower Road loops out. Fairmont Boulevard comes through on grade. This was reconstructed by the DOT recently. And what you see is that it ends about in this location. So it travels through, Tower Road travels through. What it doesn't exist is this piece of it. And it doesn't exist because of the topography that I'm going to show you here shortly. My client is proposing a development of this lot, and to do it, we brought forward a vacation right away to vacate that part of Fairmont Boulevard. It's all based upon this cross section. You know, I love drawing existing grades and finished grades, so if you'll bear with me for just one more minute. This is that alignment going down the hill, and here is Tower, and right there is where Fairmont ends right now. So I laid out an alignment that would be needed to basically make it from one end of this to the other. This would be bridge deck, and these would be basically the bridge abutments. So it would take, it would take approximately 500 foot of bridge deck to make it there. This thing would be about 75 feet in the air to get across that ravine. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to tell you I'm not a bridge designer. I've done a little looking around. The closest I can come to is that, I know that the bridge that the city just got done with by Central High School was a $32 million bridge. This is not of that scale that I could see. The only number I'm getting is that they traditionally run somewhere around $200 a square foot of foot face. So if you thought about a 500 foot long bridge that was 60 feet wide and $200 a foot face, this bridge is probably a $6 to $8 million bridge. My client wants to plat and ultimately wants to plat 20 single family residential houses, and to carry $8 million on the back of 20 residential houses works out to somewhere around $440,000 per lot. So that's why we're trying to essentially asking for a vacation right away so we can avoid building the bridge. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an area that supports that level of costs. So we're right in the right range of what's already out there, what's already developing along Tower Road. And if you go out there, you've got the assisted living facility where it ends. You can see where it was planned in future growth is putting a bridge there at some point.
I forgot to put in
And
Tony.
this is the right thing to do to start the infill process, as we've talked about so much, because this is an infill area. It's a good area for $440,000 worth of home projects to go in, and I think it's the right way to get this done. It's been sitting on the table. I think I looked at something similar to this around 2000. So I know it's been out there for a long time as a future plan, and I just think that it's great that Mr. Marshall is considering now bringing that together. So I can certainly support making this happen so that we can get that 440,000 value or higher into this area, which is waiting for development. Did I miss a number?
Yeah, can I clarify that, ma'am?
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, so what I did was I took the $8 million and divided that by the 20 lots to get to that $440,000 per lot, which is what the cost would be to each one of those lots to build the bridge. and then you put another roughly $25,000 per lot to build this road in front of it, each one of those lots, just the infrastructure costs would be are in that $450,000 range. So I apologize if there's any misunderstanding.
Yeah, thank you. Just to make sure we're on the same page, but it's an interesting place to develop. I think that it's creative. And I appreciate the risk and the challenge that you're taking on with this as well. So I definitely would like to see this happen, and I wish you good luck on it. Thank you.
I didn't mean to leapfrog over Tony Marshall. You do have a request to speak for him here, so if you'd like to approach the podium. Please identify yourself.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Tony Marshall, and yes, Lisa, sometimes I do have a hole in my head for seeking to develop some of these projects. You know, part of what makes Rapid City so beautiful also makes it very much a challenge to develop, and I've been really enjoying this conversation you guys have been having here, because you really abbreviated my talking points right now, because it sounds like you recognize the inherent difficulty in our beautiful city to developing some of these places due to primarily, you know, our topography challenges. Creates all sorts of problems. And there's a lot of these little pockets around Rapid City, and some of them, frankly, probably should never be developed for whatever reason. But there's really a handful of these pockets that, frankly, should get developed. And if you believe in smart growth, this is a big part of what smart growth is filling in these vacant pockets within the city. And you just have to recognize that in order to do that, and if you support that type of growth, you recognize that there has to be some exceptions considered. And I know that opens up you guys to scrutiny for favoritism, and you know, perhaps it's politically untenable sometimes, but you really have to look at this, as you guys have said before, with different lenses for each different project, because they all have their all inherent unique challenges, and it just takes, I think, a reasonable viewpoint from you city folk on allowing some of these exceptions to some of these projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Jason Solomon.
Thank you, and Mr. Marshall, I understand, and I know there are unique challenges. I'm going to tell you what I think is my hang-up on this, and so maybe somebody can educate me why I'm wrong, Ms. Modrick. So this has a single point of access that crosses a bridge currently, and my concern is that the only way in and out over this is someplace with a bridge, and should something happen, we have no secondary point of access to get in and out for safety. That's what I'm reading here, and so I guess let me direct the question. Ken, would you be able to answer this? Am I reviewing these documents correctly that are ingress, egress out of this neighborhood, including the assisted living facility and all of that we just have currently the one road, it's got a big bridge over it, and that's it? Or is there some other access I'm missing?
Well, in this area, accessing the Highway 16, that is the only access, and there is a definite concern about the length of the lifetime of a bridge that currently is not in compliance with state standards on Tower Road. And also a huge concern from a planning standpoint for the assisted living center having 101 units and a hotel having 82 units, needing a secondary access out of that type of development as well. So this roadway is the connection of Fairmont to Tower is considered an important connection for safety reasons.
Okay. That's usually a big buzzword for me, is the whole safety thing. So that's my only concern with this, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, whether Cale or Tony or somebody, regarding the safety, but I imagine that's a concern for you as well. Obviously, you want to be a smart developer.
I can kill anything with an S word, so with the S word, and oftentimes it does. But I mean, there is the bridge isn't the only access point to this development. There is you can go up Tower Road, which connects to Skyline Drive.
Yeah.
So there is a second way out. Were you aware of that, Ken?
Well, yeah, up to Skyline, but that presents its own difficulties simply because of where you're headed up into the hills.
Well, my point to this body is that I can't, nor can anybody else that perhaps ever develops that site, charge their purchasers of property in that neighborhood $6+ million worth. So
Yeah, bridges are very expensive. And now, you saying that there's a way out, what I'm thinking are fire. And the reason I ask this, because I serve Chapel Valley, and there's one way in and out with a bridge, and it's always kind of a concern of, with the creek right there and everything else, is there a way out just in case of fires? As we see right now, we were breathing in smoke just from Custer, and we've had M Hill, and this is a real concern. So my concern is that can people flee should something happen, and if a bridge collapse, heaven forbid, on a single access? And forgive me, I just came out of emergency preparedness training all morning, so my mind's a little bit like, what if this happens? So keeping all that in mind, that's my only concern. But it's interesting that you talk about that access. I was looking at what we have here, but there is an access up.
well, for the record, I don't need that. I don't need that right away vacated because I need that land. I don't need that land. I simply cannot afford $400,000 assessment per townhome sold.
That would make it not a realistic project. I understand that. Okay, I'll yield the floor for now. Thanks for answering my questions.
Chair recognizes John Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tony, I want to thank you for doing some of these very odd infill projects that you do. We've talked about a few of them, and there's very few people out there that will do it, and we talk about infill all the time. And this is a very, very interesting, unique lot. Can I ask you a question, Tony?
Please. Yes, please.
If you sell it out, how many townhome lots are there on this property?
20 total units.
20 units. So, it isn't a big community. You're going to come in to a cul-de-sac on the whole thing, or you're going to have a looping road? Cul-de-sac? So, typically when you do have a fire event, you have a little bit of time, a little bit of notice. Or flood, you don't really have to worry about that because you're on top of a hill. But when you come out to Tower Road, you go across a bridge, or like we said, you can go up to Skyline and go across too. So once you get to Tower Road, there's 2 access points out of there. And in the Planning Commission, we talked about this, and, the bridge is it's not feasible for anybody to buy. I mean, for somebody to pay a portion of it even costs too much money to, consider. If this was a 1,000-acre piece of property, then maybe you could build in the cost. But, when you're only putting 20 units up there, that's just not feasible. So, one of the questions we have to ask as a council is, this one's very unique with the bridge, but are we going to make every infill project in Rapid City almost undevelopable? I mean, because a lot of these infill projects that we're looking at are going to only have one access in. And, the one I think about is the one that you were thinking about doing, off of 79 over there, your lot there. That's only going to have one access in, one access out, until you get on the road that it connects to. And then you'll have an access going in different directions. But any cul-de-sac in Rapid City has only got one access in and one access out. So, it's an interesting project. I hope you can get it done. I hope we can find a way, if we don't waive the right-of-way, which Tony's saying we don't have to do, if we can just find a way to put a stipulation that he's not responsible for the bridge in the future. Maybe the bridge somehow can be put in. Maybe we can find a way to do, I don't know, something. But, when you're trying to, here's another case of making a developer pay for something that's really unrealistic to pay for. So, and there may come a point in the future where the city, because of development on the other side of that ravine, we decide we want that bridge in there for a second access. But I don't see that probably within my lifetime or my kid's lifetime because of the constraints for money for the city. So anyway, thank you. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
All right, Chair recognizes Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an area that I just don't know how I'm going to vote on this. Right now, I just don't know how I'm going to vote on this because, as you heard in my earlier comments, who's going to pay for this? Especially when we get in the future. And my next concern is, major concern is who's going to pay for it. I'd like to find a ways to help you pay for that. And again, as I said, the state legislature is just, they're working on some draft legislation now, but it's only nibbling around the edges on what we need to do here within the city of Rapid City. And it's going to eventually wind up back into, again, going back to safety, it's going to wind up back in the lap of CIP, where we just don't have the money to put it in by ourselves. So I'm also looking for other stakeholders to get involved and some other lenses or some other eyes to bring this together for a resolution. And I just don't have an answer for anybody right now for coming up with a way to get this done intelligently and not just a smart growth process, but using some good solid rationale behind this. Because safety also is a major concern for me. Because getting people out of there, yes, I see your point on the access for going up the hill, but people on the other side, do they have a way of getting out? Right now, I don't have that answer yet. I'm looking at the map right now, and it's telling me, no, they don't have another access point. So I need some more information yet before I can make a decision yet on this hit. So at this moment, I'd stand to be corrected, but at the moment I'm going to be voting no on this, with the understanding I could change my mind by my Monday evening to come up with a decision on this, because I just need some more answers on this. So at the moment, I'm going to vote no in support of what you're asking for, but knowing and understanding that that's not the final answer. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will make a motion to accept the request by Spur Lake Consulting for the consideration of application for a vacation of right-of-way, and if I could get a second?
Second.
Moved by Modrick, seconded by Roberts.
Thank you. This is an easy one to take a look at. You don't really need the topographical map. The bridge itself is self-explanatory. Like I said, I think I had researched documents years ago about this bridge opportunity around 2000, and the reason why this area is slow to develop could be because of this. This is a bridge that may or may not ever happen, and so is this a reason or a time to slow this down? Is there good access? Absolutely. Just last year, the South Dakota DOT just upgraded Tower Bridge, so maybe Ken doesn't know that, but it was just upgraded standards. So that has made that bridge a lot healthier than it was a couple of years ago. And going all the way up, there's infrastructure already on Tower Road that even has our sidewalks, even though there's nothing that's been built on either side, going up to Skyline and a service road. And that's a well-maintained road, including snow removal. There's housing already that has started there, town housing. We've got commercial going in, commercial lots that are for sale. So that's already developed. It's already in the plan. So this shouldn't hinder future development of this strategic area and topography from going forward. We've got the assisted living facility, and that assisted living facility also has plans to do townhomes around it. It's part of their plan. It's part of their phases. So we've got more coming. And it's coming without the need of a bridge. That didn't have anything to do with the assisted living facility. So I believe we're spot on to allow this vacation of right-of-way to happen, to continue the infill growth. The area is of demand. It will be a prosperous area. People will want this housing, and this is the time to do it. Otherwise, if this was on the plate in 2000, we're going to see it on the plate for 40 years and nothing happened to it. So it is a time, I hope that you would consider accepting this motion and allowing this to proceed forward at this time, and we'll see where it goes. But this is a bridge to nowhere, and it has been for a very long time. Thank you.
Okay. Before I recognize Jason Solomon, I'd just like to say, should I order pizza for everybody? Because this is going kind of long. Okay, Jason Solomon.
Doing the people's work, so so I'm going to go along with Lisa's motion for now, but just as a heads up, I'm doing this, we have until Monday night to think about it. I want to review the area a little bit more. My instinct's always, I want to see this development happen. So even though I'm going along, I'm just giving a heads up because people get upset when you change your mind. I think I need to chew on it a little bit more, but I'm going to go ahead and go along with it. But I think I need that safety question answered, which you called the S word, but it's always number one with me. And if I can have that resolved in my mind, I'll feel a lot better about it. So really, I'm giving a vote today, but Monday night's really where it's at. And so, all right, with that, I'll yield.
So your vote doesn't really mean anything today? Okay, all right. Okay, I just want to make sure that I understood that. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Roberts. Second by Solomon. All in favor?
Aye.
And we stand adjourned.